Today we have Joe Addeo, who's a professional astrologer practicing in New York City. After extensive study with some of the most respected astrologers in the New York community, he achieved Level 4 certification with the National Council for Geocosmic Research, which is us, NCGR. Joe is an integral part of the NCGR, the New York City astrological community, having been elected to the board of directors of the New York chapter in 2001, where he served through the spring of 2019. He's a regular guest speaker at NCGR conferences. He's written articles and columns and is an ongoing contributor for the astrological magazine, The Ingress. Aside from his thriving practice, he teaches beginners and advanced classes on a regular basis and lectures for astrological organizations throughout the New York metropolitan area and elsewhere in the country. For 20 years, he was a professional operatic tenor and has graced many world stages with his voice. Welcome, Joe, and the topic today is eclipses, what they are and how to use them. You're on, Joe.
Thank you. I'm real happy to be here. My first webinar for NCGR, so I'm real excited. Eclipses. We're in the eclipse season now. Eclipses are heightened, more intense, and often more faded versions of new moons and full moons. I'm just going to spend a little time on the astronomy eclipses. I'm sure a lot of you know what it is, but I'm not going to spend that much time other than to say that a solar eclipse, we all know, is when the sun and the moon are conjunct in the same sign, and the moon passes between the earth and the sun, blocking out the light of the sun. And a lunar eclipse happens when the sun and the moon are in opposite signs, and then the earth passes between the sun and the moon, blocking out the light of the moon. When you look at a birth chart, you can always tell if somebody's born on a solar or lunar eclipse, because both the moon and the sun have to be within a certain distance of the transiting lunar nodes. The path of the Earth's orbit around the sun we know is defined as the ecliptic, and the lunar nodes are the points where the orbit of the moon will cross the ecliptic. And whenever the moon conjoins the north or south node, then it's on the same plane as the sun and the earth, and we have an eclipse. We all know this happens about twice a year, every 6 months or so. And for a solar eclipse to occur, the nodes must be within 18 degrees of the new moon. If the lunation is between 0 and 10 degrees, then it could be a total solar eclipse. But anything above that degree, up to 18, will be a partial solar eclipse. But for the lunar eclipse, it has to be within 1 to 4 degrees of either nodes, and then it'll be a total lunar eclipse. But if the full moon is between 6 and 12 degrees, it'll be a partial lunar eclipse. Now, I have one visual here I want to show you. It's a little video, and it's a really great video by this Jared Owen about a visual about the lunar nodes, and I think it's a really good thing to look at before we get into the guts of it. So I'm going to start to play this right now for everybody.
In the previous video, we talked about the phases of the moon and how that relates to the moon's orbit around the Earth.
Can everybody see this?
We'll watch that video first.
Yes.
To put things in perspective, here's the relative size of the sun, the moon, and the Earth. The sun is about 400 times bigger than the moon. Now let's look at the actual distances between them. The sun is also about 400 times further from the Earth than the moon is. This is why the sun and the moon appear to be about the same size in the sky. Stellar nebulae on screen are not always drawn to scale. The moon's orbit is actually not a perfect circle. It's not made of any ellipse.
Joe, not everyone can hear this. The sound's not coming across very well on this.
It's farthest away from the Earth. We call it
Okay.
It's only a small difference, but it's enough to cause the moon to grow and shrink as seen from the Earth. Okay, now we get into some rare events with the moon. Each time a new moon happens, there's a chance that the moon will block the sunlight and cause a shadow to appear on a portion of the Earth.
Should I stop? Is everybody not able to hear this?
Yeah, I would stop it because a lot of people are complaining that it's breaking up and they can't hear it.
Fine, okay.
To block the sunlight from reaching the moon. We call this a lunar eclipse. So now the question is, why don't we get a solar eclipse?
Okay. Well, you have everybody understands. I'm sure we're all astrologers, and we all know the difference between solar and lunar eclipse in terms of the nodes of the moon and where the sun passes and when the earth and when the moon passes. So we'll forget about that video. I'm sorry you can't see because it's actually a really good video. So if you want to go on to yourself, go on your own page, go to Jared Owen, and there's so many visuals here because sometimes it's hard to know to visualize as the lunar nodes are crossing the ecliptic and exactly what it looks like. And to get a visual, it's really helpful. So as I said, eclipses happen in pairs twice a year and approximately every 6 months. Sometimes the solar eclipse occurs first, followed by a lunar eclipse 2 weeks later, and sometimes the reverse. Every once in a while, like in the summer of 2020 coming up, we'll have 3 eclipses, a lunar followed by a solar followed by a lunar, or conversely, a solar followed by a lunar followed by a solar, which occurred in the summer of 2018. Eclipses occur for approximately 12 to 18 months in the same sign polarity. So it will highlight those houses within your natal chart for that length of time. And those houses will be pregnant with all kinds of possibilities. Now, if you're using whole sign houses, it's very clear, the polarities. If you're using Placidus, it might skew into different houses over that time. So, for instance, this year, we're finishing up the eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn by the summer of July 2020. But they started in this polarity in the summer of 2018. So it's not exactly 2 years, it's almost 2 years because there's an overlap with the signs as it starts to precess from one duality to another. But a rule of thumb is 12 to 18 months. So 2020 is the year when Cancer Capricorn house polarity in your natal chart will have one final whammy and zap of energy before moving on to the Gemini Sagittarius polarity. Remember, eclipses always move backwards because they're calculated with the lunar nodes, and they're always retrograde. Eclipses are one of the most important tools at an astrologer's disposal. Looking at the eclipses over a year's period helps greatly focus the areas of life being affected in the client's lives and what houses they fall in. And I'm tending to use whole sign houses these days. So when using whole sign houses, they always fall at opposite signs and opposite houses. So the issues of those 2 houses will be where there will be juicy things happening in your life, where there's more electric, unsettling types of energy in your clients' lives. There's a lot of pregnant with possibilities, a lot of often problems, issues, challenges arise in those houses, as well as positive things. And then if planets are being hit by the eclipse degree through a hard aspect by no more than a 3-degree orb, then those are pieces of your character in the client's personality that need to be examined. Those are archetypal energies that are being dealt with. And important people who relate to that energy of that planet in the chart can play major roles in your life. So you're looking at the houses for the areas of life that are going to be stimulated for that 12 to 18 month period. And then within that, if you're getting a very hard hit by hard aspect, opposition, square, or conjunction, and use only 2 to 3 degree orb, and that'll bring in that planetary energy. There are more destined events happen around eclipses. They're just heightened versions of new moons and full moons, more destined, fated types of events, and in the world as well. A rule of thumb, but by no means this is written in stone, but a good rule of thumb is on a solar eclipse, the seed is being planted for something new. Something new is initiated or begins that will be played out in the 6 month period following, and will come up in 6 months for reevaluation or to move on to a next level in the eclipses 6 months down the line. The lunar eclipse tends to bring up something old from the previous eclipse 6 months ago. So something from the past comes up to be resolved or taken to a new level. And they always reflect back to each other. What happened 6 months ago tends to go to something new in the next 6 months, and vice versa. And new things begin. The new moons, lunar eclipses plant the seeds, and solar eclipses, lunar and full moons are culminations. Things come to light. The 6 week eclipse period is always stressful. even when good things are happening. Everyone's energy is kind of hyped up as if they're experiencing a Uranian type of transit. Things are chaotic, upset, upside down, fluctuating, excitable, up in the air, unpredictable, predictable in their unpredictability, unreliable as if you're riding on a roller coaster. We tend to overreact or in knee-jerk reactions often during the eclipse season. There's a feeling of like drinking 10 cups of coffee an hour, or snorting a lot of cocaine. Everybody's like hyped up. People are nervous and nerve-wracked. Both types of eclipses provoke similar feelings, but the motivation's a little different. On a lunar eclipse, and we have one coming up on January 10th, we're going to talk about more specifics here. On the lunar eclipse, there's too much light often. We're bombarded with too much information that overwhelms us as we try to organize it and get a grasp on it. On a solar eclipse, the sky is dark. There's no light. So we feel discombobulated, disembodied, upset and anxiety-ridden because we don't quite have enough information. And there's trepidation around what the future might bring. An event might happen, but we don't know how it's going to play out. On a lunar eclipse, the event's playing out, and it's just it's like the star card or the tower card. There's more fear of the unknown. If the event doesn't happen right around the eclipse, or in this eclipse season, which is the 6 weeks, then it will play out over the course of the next 6 months at trigger points. And I'm going to give examples of this during the 90 minutes here. And you'll get more understanding about the seeds that have been planted. So if you see that like this upcoming solar eclipse is at 4 degrees Capricorn, and if you have a planet at 4 degrees Capricorn or 4 degrees Libra or 4 degrees Aries or Capricorn Aries or the 4 cardinal signs, and nothing really major happens, you think, well, just wait, because there will be trigger points of the sun and Mars and the nodes in the month or weeks after the eclipse that often will make the event much more noticeable to you. Often people tend to get physically sick because their energy is zapped, especially when hitting an important planet or chart point, like the sun or the moon. This eclipse is hitting my Saturn. The minute we went into eclipse season, the eclipse season started on the Gemini full moon on December 12th. That day I started getting sick. And I'm like, I'm about to curse. Oh, damn it. There's the eclipse. I'm trying to get the laryngitis, and it's hitting my Saturn, which can be very debilitating. It means a lot of other things, but on schedule, that full moon happened. I was giving a lecture at a high school, an astrology lecture at a high school on December 12th on the Gemini full moon. It was a perfect time to give a lecture at a high school to students about astrology on the Gemini full moon. And that night, I started getting a sore throat. I started getting sick. So I went, one of these eclipse events for me coming up, right as we entered the eclipse season. Another rule of thumb to tell clients is that during an eclipse, nothing is as bad as it seems, and nothing conversely is as good as it seems, because everything's a little inflated. If you have to make a decision on an eclipse because a major event happens, like a death or a birth or an accident, well, you have to deal with the eclipse right away because you have to make that decision. But if whatever comes up during an eclipse can wait to be acted on until about a week or two after the eclipse ends, then try to wait, because whatever comes up during that eclipse, you'll be calmer, a little calmer in the week following the eclipse. And after those 6 weeks, you'll have a little more level-headed, be a little more level-headed and have a little more equilibrium to make a more well-informed decision. But again, sometimes you have to act. And if the eclipse event happens and you have to act, you have to act. But if it's a decision that can be recalibrated or decided, just wait till 2 weeks after the last eclipse. Now this eclipse, the astrologers refer to the eclipse season. It lasts about 6 weeks, and this is how we define it. The 2 weeks leading up to the first eclipse, things start to heat up, and life becomes a little more hectic, and even world events start to get activated. Then you have the 2 weeks between the first eclipse and the second eclipse, and this is usually the most tumultuous time. And then you have the 2 weeks after the second eclipse, people begin to calm down and things start to gain some equilibrium. So let's use this. We're in the middle of an eclipse season right now. This is how it works. The upcoming solar eclipse is on December 26th at 4 degrees 7 minutes of Capricorn. But the eclipse season started at the full moon on December 12th at 1952 of Gemini. And now we're in the 2 weeks leading up to the solar eclipse. And everybody, if you have degrees around 4 degrees of the cardinal signs, should start to feel things heating up in their life. I know I am. My Saturn is at 6 degrees Capricorn. I got sick right on this lunar eclipse. And I could just feel the things starting to build up. And life is becoming more juicy. And according to the house polarity, okay? So for instance, well, let me just finish this. I'm sorry. So life's become, and the events will color the next 6 months. Whatever events are about to start happening, it's going to color the next 6 months. And then the 2 weeks between the solar eclipse is the 26th. And then the lunar eclipse is the 10th of January at 20 degrees Cancer. So the 2 weeks between the solar eclipse on the 26th of December and the lunar eclipse on the 10th of January will be the height of the eclipse season. And then there'll be a 2 week period following the lunar eclipse, leading up to the next new moon on January 25th, 2020 at 4 degrees Aquarius. And that's when the eclipse season is over. So you have the 2 weeks before the first eclipse, the 2 weeks between the two, and the 2 weeks following. It's 6 weeks. And now we're in the 2 week build-up phase. 2 week build-up phase. And the season is put into motion. And often within the following 6 months, there's going to be trigger dates to the eclipse meeting that matters. Like whatever comes up during this eclipse will be resolved or taken to new levels or be dealt with further on those trigger dates. Now, here's how eclipses are used in prediction. Let me bring up the chart of the upcoming eclipse. I'm going to bring up, this is the solar eclipse we're having. I'm sorry, that's the June 21st eclipse. That's the wrong one. I want the solar eclipse on December 26th for Washington, D.C. Let's set it up for Washington, D.C., okay? I'm using whole sign houses here, okay? We can see that we have the sun and the moon at 4 degrees Capricorn, 6 minutes. Got Libra rising, 4 degrees Libra rising in whole sign houses. That makes the whole first house Libra. All the Capricorn planets here, we're going to have a gaggle of Capricorn planets, but we care mostly about the 4 degrees. That's the eclipse degree in the 4th house. The midheaven is at 5 degrees Cancer. So this eclipse is exactly on Washington, D.C.'s IC and exactly opposite Washington, D.C.'s midheaven. I'll talk a little bit about this in a second. I just want to put the chart up here. So we care mostly about this degree, and the Jupiter, too, is close to the degree. But this is how we work with eclipses for predictive purposes. Number one, on the day of the eclipse, see what house the eclipse falls in, and more particularly if the eclipse degree is hitting a natal planet by hard aspect. Now, this is the eclipse chart. So this is just going to tell us about the country right now. But what you want to do with this eclipse chart is lay it over your natal chart. And when you lay it over your natal chart, the 4 degree eclipse degree is going to fall in a house. And that's the house in your natal chart that's going to have the bang, the wham, the action. Okay, everybody understand that? Here, it's in the 4th house for Washington, D.C. This is just the eclipse chart on its own. But you have to lay it over your chart to see where it falls in your chart. So see what house it's in, and then see if it's hitting any natal planet by hard aspect. No more than 3 degree orb. I like to see 2, but don't go further than 3 degrees orbs. Otherwise, it gets sloppy. And notice if there are any transiting planets conjunct the eclipse degree, because they will color the tone of the eclipse. And here we do have a planet transiting near the eclipse near the eclipse degree. It's Jupiter. Jupiter is 5 degrees Capricorn on the day of the eclipse. So Jupiter is coloring the eclipse. So if you were just looking at this as a standalone chart for Washington, D.C., and our president and everything going on, we're having a lot of legal proceedings that are ripping apart the foundation of the country, the structures of the country. The eclipse here is in the 4th house, the foundation of our country. In Capricorn, the structures. Jupiter deals with legal matters and foreigners. And the eclipse is in Capricorn, the patriarchy, the people in power. It's also, if it's conjunct the IC, it's opposed to the MC, which would represent the president, the people in power. And it's squaring the ascendant, 4 degrees Libra, how we appear to the world. This is a very action-oriented cardinal type of eclipse on all the angles here, okay? You can see what's happening in the country. That in these 2 weeks building up to the eclipse, we have all the impeachment proceedings going on, right? And the Jupiter is inflating things. Jupiter's going to make this bigger. Jupiter's going to exaggerate. Jupiter might get a little sloppy, okay? And it's coloring all the Capricorn energy. Jupiter's in fall in Capricorn, correct? So we'll have to see how he works here. Number 2, use the transits of the Sun, the Mars, and the nodes to the eclipse degree, and when it hits that degree in the upcoming 6 months by hard aspect. Those are going to trigger the eclipses. Also use any other transiting planet, especially the outers or a retrograde init planet hitting the degree 3 times within a month, if there's anything like that happening. This happened recently in 2017 on the eclipse when Mercury was retrograde. I don't usually use Mercury as but retrograde on the eclipse degree, then I will. So for instance, we're going to hit your date. So if nothing happens on script per se, well, we have trigger dates that can happen foreshadowing the eclipse and following the eclipse. Here we have Jupiter. Jupiter will be a trigger planet here. So the eclipse is the 26th of January, but Jupiter gets to 4 degrees of Capricorn on December 20th. So Jupiter's going to hit the eclipse degree on December 20th, 6 days before the actual eclipse. So Jupiter will foreshadow the eclipse in some way if it hits your chart. So you want to pay attention to what Jupiter's doing. Now, Jupiter could bring luck or something good, but Jupiter could also exaggerate and broaden things and exaggerate things and make things bigger. And Jupiter can be a death planet, right? When Jupiter's involved in death, it means you're going on a long journey, usually a peaceful long journey. So Jupiter's going to trigger it, but then on February 22nd, 2020, Mars gets to 4 degrees Capricorn, and he could trigger the eclipse. So if you think nothing's happening on the eclipse and you have a planet around 4 degrees, wait to see what happens when Mars triggers it on the 22nd of March, because that will put something into action. The North Node is going to get to 4 degrees Cancer in Capricorn. The North Node will get to 4 degrees Cancer. The South Node will get to 4 degrees Capricorn on March 22nd. That will trigger the eclipse in terms of connections, in terms of fated connections and people and things that are going to exit your life. And then the Sun will trigger the eclipse on March 24th when he gets to 4 degrees Aries. So in every eclipse that we have, solar or lunar, but here we're talking about the solar eclipse, the transiting nodes, the transiting Sun, and transiting Mars will always trigger the eclipse. The Sun is your purpose, your goal, and your wills. Mars is the planet of action, and then the nodes are destiny. So they will always trigger. And then in certain eclipses, if the outer planets are near degrees, they can trigger too. And here we do have that in the case of Jupiter, but Jupiter will foreshadow it earlier. Okay? The north node transits are what you have to incorporate and let in, and the south node transits are what you have to let go of and are leaving. Also look at the stations of the outer planets, even if they're not affecting the eclipse degrees, because the outer stations of the planets are always sensitive dates that can push anything around eclipse energy. So we have a lunar eclipse coming up on January 10th, and that same day Uranus is stationing direct. So the lunar eclipse on January 10th, here, let me put that up. Lunar eclipse, January 10th, Washington. Here's the lunar eclipse. It's at 20 degrees Cancer, right? And on that day, where's Uranus? Where is Uranus? Over here, you see the S? That means he's stationing. So Uranus is going to be stationing on the day of the lunar eclipse, so that's a big deal. But even in the months following, whenever any of the outer planets station, that's always a time for predictive things with clients. So if the eclipse is bringing up heated things in the chart, stations of the outer planets can also be predictive dates for you to use with client consultations. Look at Mercury, Venus, and Mars retrograde only if they're pertinent. Like in 2017, Mercury was going over the eclipse degree 3 times, so he was pertinent. But I wouldn't necessarily use them in the bigger picture if they're just shooting over fast. Except for Mars. Mars, I definitely would. Also, the lunations of the new moons and the full moons. If we're having a solar eclipse at 4 degrees Capricorn, that means every month we're having a new moon at 4 degrees of the next sign. So that's going to trigger the eclipse in a new house in your chart. And look at the triggers in the hard aspects. So look at the new moon when it gets to after Capricorn. The next new moon is going to be Aquarius. That's going to be the next house up. Then it's going to be after that in Pisces, and that's going to be in the sextile house. And then after that, it's going to be in Aries, and that's going to be in the next cardinal house squaring. So watch those lunations for triggers as well. They will be very near the eclipse degree, but in adjacent houses. The same eclipses happen every 19 years. It's the Metonic cycle. So if you're old enough, look back 19 years ago to when we had these last set of eclipses, which was in 2001. And you can help clients make predictions. You can help make predictions of what's going to happen with clients, because the eclipses will happen in the same degree 19 years later. And often there's some kind of evolutionary type of thing or something similar. Like sometimes you see a child born 19 years earlier than maybe somebody else has a baby in the family. It can be stuff like that that's correlated.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, we have a question here.
Right.
It came in on the chat line. What does it mean that the Uranus is stationed on the day of the eclipse?
It could mean there could be much more sudden and unexpected events and turnarounds and things. It could be more shocking types of things happen. It could be in the mundane world, maybe an earthquake of some kind. It could be a big storm of some kind. In your natal chart, you have to see where the Uranus is stationing, and if it's hitting, Uranus is stationing at 2 degrees of Taurus. So you really have to see if you have a planet around 2 degrees of the fixed signs, because Uranus will affect it. The eclipse will just exacerbate it. So we have an eclipse on the same day, and eclipses have very Uranian fields to them. So the Uranus shifting will can make things very chaotic. It could mean something different in everybody's chart depending on where it's hitting. Okay, Uranus is kind of a 52 card pickup kind of planet, right? It comes along and it reverses things, and it changes things. And Mitchell Lewis has been talking a lot about the stock market collapsing, and Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. and there could be a lot of huge fluctuations coming up with the stock market. And that might be a time when we see that happen. Uranus is a planet that represents politicians and Congress and large groups and organizations like the Senate and Congress. And we're going through impeachment proceedings. So this could be something shocking about that. Now, I'm not even going to talk about that. It could be shocking either way. Either he gets impeached or he doesn't get impeached. Either way is kind of shocking. Either way is kind of shocking, right? You know, so we have to see it. And the lunar eclipse is at 20 degrees Cancer, and we're a Cancer country, right? And everything about Cancer Capricorn stuff is being triggered here. Our country, our security, and the people in power. This is the Cancer Capricorn polarity that's been in effect for the last 2 years. You know, what the structures of the patriarchy, the structures of this, and Uranus is a progressive planet, and Uranus is a planet that wants something new and is about rebellion. It's a rebellion, it's revolution. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, whether he continues his power or not, either way, there's a revolution going on. He's a very rebellious kind of guy. Both sides are in very rebellious mood. So the station here is coloring the next 6 months too. Okay. Now I'm gonna use myself as an example here because I have just so many good things happening here. I'm gonna put my chart up here with the eclipse around it. Hold on one second, and the solar eclipse. Let's put the solar eclipse for New York, okay. Okay, now this is what I'm talking about for everybody. The inner wheel here is my birth chart, okay? The outer wheel is the eclipse, okay? Oh, that's the June eclipse. Well, that's a big eclipse for me too. Oh my God, my whole life's going to be destroyed. Well, I'm sorry. Let me do this again. So me, and I want the solar eclipse for December 26th in New York. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now, you see the eclipse degree is 4 degrees of Capricorn, right? My Saturn is 6 degrees of Capricorn.
4 degrees.
Okay, this is where the eclipse is hitting me. I told you as we went into eclipse season, I started getting sick. But the other thing going on here, the 4th house is your home and your family, and it's happening. My eclipse is resonating with the chart of the eclipse because I have Libra rising and the eclipse has Libra rising. So all these Capricorn planets are in my 4th house, my whole sign houses. Well, my mother just got out of the hospital. My mother fell and broke her hip a month ago. And now my mother's home bedridden. So this is how you interpret it. The eclipse is at 4 degrees Capricorn on my Saturn in the 4th house. My old mother fell and broke her bones, and this eclipse is ushering in 6 months where I'm going to have more responsibility caring for my elderly mother. I'm also going to have more responsibility in general with my career because Saturn's a career planet. And even though this is a negative thing with my mother I'm dealing with, my business and my astrology is also taking off. And it's been really crazy. Actually, astrologers love eclipses because it always makes your business boom. But here it's on my Saturn. I'm going to have to be more responsible. I have more burdens. I have more responsibilities. I better be more structured. I'm launching my new website. I'm restructuring my website. I'm giving up my first webinar, right? This is in the 2 weeks leading up to the eclipse. This is a new Saturn responsibility, learning something new. I have new family challenges, not just with my mother. She's exiting. You know, she's getting old. I'm not saying she's going to die this year, but I'm building new family. I have a whole group of friends who are having babies. All these gay guys now are having babies, and the structures of my family life are all changing, and I'm building new structures around the family. Remember, the North Node's in Cancer. The South Node is in Capricorn. It's on my Saturn. What's leaving me are some old family structures in the 4th house, but the North Node in Cancer in the 10th house is saying, but I'm building new family. new family in my career, new family out in the world, so it's a real big deal here. And also, you have to read eclipses within transits. If you notice, I've just gone through my second Saturn return. My second Saturn return ended, but now this eclipse is hitting the Saturn saying, you thought your Saturn return ended, but this eclipse is making it continue. This eclipse is making it continue. You're getting older. You want more authority. Saturn's in dignity in Capricorn. It's my best planet. I'm lucky. It's the only planet, okay? But my mother fell and broke her hip. That's this next 6 months a lot dealing with that, okay? Who has a question? Do I hear something? Hello?
Anybody have questions? Hold on.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Saturn in the first house on the ascendant at 4 degrees, at 2 degrees. For you, it's the family. It's like your home. What is it in the first house on the ascendant?
It's you, your body. I'm getting old. I have more. My whole outlook to life is being Saturn. My body might be breaking down. I have to. My whole image that I have to learn to project this year is one of great responsibility. I might have more burden just in everything I do. With me, it's in the 4th house. If it's on the 1st house, the ascendant, that's a health house in terms of your physical body, but it's the image that you project. It's who you are. It's your personality. It's your persona. I either need to take on persona. Now, you have to take it age appropriately. If you're an older person, I might be coming into more responsibility in my career and more recognition. If I'm a younger person, I might become getting more burden and learning new things to take on more responsibility, but it's not a time of achievement. For an older person, it might be more of a time of achievement. Are you talking about yourself?
Yes, and I'm your age. I'm same year as you.
So what's happening with you? What's happening how's your health? How's your body? You're feeling old. You've got to be feeling old. Just age appropriately. You might be having more knee problems. You might be having teeth problems. You might be having skin problems. You might be going through relationship challenges. The ascendant. Is Saturn right on your ascendant or just in the 1st house?
On the ascendant.
You might be going through a marital divorce. That's a relationship. All my relationships, the way I've structured my relationships, are going through major make it or break it times in the next 6 months. And you've just had your Saturn return. So this is similar to me. This will be prolonging it.
And how does the Jupiter play with this? Does it
exaggerates it, it exacerbates it, it compounds it, it makes it grow. You have to see what kind of natal Jupiter you have. Do you have Jupiter we consider to be the greater benefic. But in Capricorn, he expands responsibility. So in my chart, I'm having an expansion of responsibility around working at home. Well, for me, that's great because I work from home. I do all my astrology from home. I don't mind getting an expansion of responsibility working from home, but I'm also getting the expansion and the responsibility of working in my mother's home. That's not the greatest thing because she's ill. So for you, it's it will.
Expansion at work, and get more responsibility at work.
More responsibility. If you're in a leadership position, are you in a leadership position at work?
Yeah. I'm hoping to
expand your responsibility and leadership. But Jupiter's a sloppy planet. Jupiter's a very sloppy planet. So he says you better be organized. Well, Saturn says you better be organized. Jupiter's going to give you more responsibility. But if you're not paying attention to what Jupiter's doing, he can make you sloppy with the structures of your life. So you have to get super, super organized. With more responsibility coming your way, Jupiter's not rewarding you with fun and good times. He's rewarding you with more responsibility. So I have to get more structured and more disciplined.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm sorry, I got to get
organized here.
Any other questions, folks?
Any other questions right now? Okay.
Question.
Yes, I think we have another one, Joe. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, how would you interpret a quincunx from the eclipse to a critical point?
I was always taught by John Marcusella. Quincunxes
I know there's differing opinions.
are health oriented.
Okay.
I don't. I will always ask somebody about their health about that, but I'll just find out from them. We're not doctors, right? But oriented, and the word adjustment is always used for quincunx. Adjustment. It's that Virgo Scorpio energy. It's not the square which forces you into action, and a crisis happens and I got to take action to solve a problem. The quincunx is that thing of you go to work and Jesus fucking Christ, who's bothered? It's a little thorn in my side. It's a little prick in my side. It's the adjustment that you make every day at work to solve problems, not necessarily crisis, but I've got to work on the details. I've got to emotionally process this situation. I've got to mentally process that situation. So, and Virgo, the quincunx correlates to Virgo and Scorpio. So health and mental and emotional processing. And it depends on the two planets. So give me what's quincunx and what?
My ascendant degree is 4 degrees Leo. So this is in a quincunx.
So the Jupiter and the eclipse quincunx that. It's 4 degrees Leo, so that puts the Capricorn energy in which house there?
The 6th.
Okay, so that's a health house anyway. So that would be health and work. Make sure any kind of adjustment you have to make to work isn't going to affect your heart.
So it's not crisis. It's more like
it's a overworking
responsibility, sort of.
responsibility. But if you're somebody who gets overworked on the concept, the eclipse and the Jupiter exacerbating the eclipse from the 6th house to the ascendant is going to make you overwork.
Okay.
And you're the type of person that doesn't pay attention to your body when you're overworked and eats poorly and everything. It could adversely, maybe in 6 months, affect your health. Maybe you'll gain weight. That won't be good for you. Or your diet won't be good for your heart, what would that mean possibly? An increase in your cholesterol. Again, this doesn't have to be major like life or death, but that would be the symbolism of something like that.
That is so helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who was that?
This is Ann Rubner.
Oh, hi, Ann. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, there's something called Saros series. Bernadette Brady. Bernadette Brady wrote this great book. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
It's called Predictive Astrology: The Eagle and the Lark. And remember I said there's a metonic cycle to eclipses. Every 19 years they repeat the same degree. But there's also a Saros cycle. And I don't want to go into this in too much detail because I could do a whole 90 minutes on this. But Saros cycles, there's Saros cycles families. And every eclipse starts up at the North Pole if it's a North Node eclipse, or at the South Pole if it's a South Pole eclipse. And they go on for about 1,200 years. And every 18 years, the metonic cycle is 19 years, but the Saros cycle happens every 18 years. And there's different families of eclipses with the Saros cycle. And she has done some really fabulous delineations. So if you know this book and you want to look at your Saros cycle, you could see what Saros cycle this family of eclipses is in. And this one that we have coming up right now, according to Bernadette Brady, is a 3 South eclipse. So, in her book, she says, this family of eclipses brings with it the sudden ending of associations or of a relationship, possibly with a younger person. There is a large emotional component as the Pluto is involved and a sense of traumatic transformation. This can be through news received or short journeys undertaken. What she's doing in the Saros cycle is the minute this eclipse started, which was in August of 1208, she delineates what the eclipse is in 1208. You can't do houses at the North or South Pole, so she's just doing midpoints and aspects of the planets. And then she's interpreting what this family of eclipses means. And then you can apply it to each family of eclipses every 18 years. So it's another interesting tool. I don't use it all that often, but it is interesting. It is interesting. So for instance, it's saying this family of eclipses brings with it sudden ending of associations of a relationship, possibly with a younger person. Now you have to apply it to your chart. So if I'm applying it to my chart, and this eclipse is hitting my Saturn, and my mother is ill and sick, and she possibly, transition soon. And this eclipse, this family of eclipses says sudden endings of associations, primarily with younger people, because she's interpreting by certain things in the original family. But it's hitting my Saturn. This could be a change in my relationship with my mother. And also the change in relationships with younger people, in the sense that I have new families of friends starting who are having new children. So the structures of my relationships in the family situation are changing, with relationships leaving of old people coming in. I don't want to talk too much about the Saros cycle, but if you all have this book, it's a really great thing to look at. It's a really, really great thing to look at, and it can give extra added dimension to interpreting eclipses.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to muting everybody so Joe can continue, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now, also, if you look at the lunar eclipse, you are unmuted by host. Okay, I'm unmuted, good. Okay, sorry. The lunar eclipse on January 10th, not only is the Uranus stationing, but what great conjunction do we have that day? The Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees of Capricorn, which is right next to the eclipse degree. So on the lunar eclipse, we have at 22 degrees Capricorn is part of the eclipse. Now, we've got Jupiter as part of the solar eclipse, and we've got the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. If you're reading this for Washington, D.C., I don't even think I have to interpret this for anybody, do I? Look what's going on in the government. Look what's going on in the government. And if we're reading this, the lunar eclipse is in the 2nd and the 8th house. Jupiter's on the solar eclipse, so this could have a lot to do with foreigners in the legal system. And this lunar eclipse has to do with money and our resources and our dealings with power with foreign entities, with the powers over with the closed dealings behind closed doors. The structures that have been in power for hundreds and hundreds of years are breaking down, and new structures are being built. I mean, it's so obvious what's going on in our country. It's so obvious. We're also getting our Pluto return, but these eclipses, are bringing everything. We're entering the final 6 months of the eclipses in Capricorn and Cancer. So everything's coming to a head in the next 6 months in the country, right? We have an election year. Everybody's going to be campaigning. We have impeachment processes going on. We have Supreme Court decisions being made. Who knows, with Jupiter as part of the solar eclipse, what kinds of new entities and new things might be coming in with the Supreme Court and the law. Set the eclipse for the country's capital, for whatever country you want to look at, for whatever city you want to look at. For the United States, New York and Washington have very similar longitude or latitude lines. So they're going to be in the same houses. But look at the city you're in. But for the country, you look at Washington. And it's a big deal. I mean, big deal. Remember, eclipses don't happen in isolation. Your interpretation is always going to be colored by current transits and progressions. Okay, now let's look at some other examples here. Oh, I've got a really great example of the 19-year cycle here. This is a client of mine. This is a client of mine who's a sculptor, very successful sculptor. On November, well, we don't need to get all the eclipse degrees up. Okay. On November 13th, 1993, we had a solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Scorpio, 21 degrees of Scorpio. That's his midheaven. Everybody see that? I'm circling the midheaven. 21 degrees of Scorpio, not November 13th. That same month, he had his first gallery exhibition here in New York City at Tibor Naj Gallery in New York City. His first major sculpting exhibition. He was just getting his career started. The eclipse was that month on his midheaven, and he had his first gallery. Big deal for him. His career started. 19 years later, on November 13th, 2012, remember I said eclipses go in 19-year cycles. The same eclipse happened on his midheaven, 18 degrees Scorpio. He had since moved to France, and he made his career in France and Europe. And he had a major gallery exhibition in France and England in the same month, 19 years later, when the eclipse was at 21 Scorpio again. So this is a great example of something happened 19 years ago, and 19 years later, a similar kind of event. Here, a much bigger exhibition in a museum and in a gallery, and permanent pieces being put on display. He started having permanent pieces put on display at the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. He had major pieces put in the royal family houses in England. He had this opening at this other gallery. All correlating back to the 19 years before that. You get it? This is a great example of that. I have another client here. This is her birth chart. She's a Leo. The sun at 5 degrees Leo. The moon at 19 degrees Scorpio. Her mother died on July 30th, 2013. Now, the eclipse, we had a solar eclipse on May 10th, 2013. Let me put this chart up. May 10th, 2013. Let me just get the exact degree of the eclipse here. Okay, the exact degree of the eclipse, everybody, on that day is 1932, right? You see that? The eclipse that day, 19 Taurus 31. Her moon
Wow.
is 19 Scorpio. Now, her mother's still alive, but her mother's getting sick. Her mother's weakening. So, the client comes to you. They tell you their mother's ill. You see this eclipse. It's a solar eclipse on May 9th, opposite the moon. Well, it's all going to be about the mother for the next 6 months. Now, is the mother necessarily going to die? Well, not necessarily, but you know you're going to talk with the client about the mother's illness getting worse, and there's going to be more issues around the mother and the home and the family and Scorpio issues around the mother and deep-seated emotional issues. She's going to definitely have deep-seated emotional issues with the mother because natally, you got to read these eclipses with the natal chart. Saturn squares the moon. Here's her natal Saturn at 20 degrees Aquarius. It squares the moon at 19 Scorpio. The eclipse setting into motion the next 6 months is at 19, so it sets up a T-square with the Saturn and the moon. And the T-square revolves up into the 10th house.
And Joe, natally, she's got a T-square to the moon and 19 Scorpio, Mercury at 22.
Absolutely. So it's like a grand square here, right?
Yeah,
So
it's huge.
here we've got the eclipse, right? Now, look at the lunar eclipse. Okay, so this is the solar eclipse. The lunar eclipse is on right before this at 4:25:13. The lunar eclipse, this is hysterical. Well, it's not hysterical. The lunar eclipse is at 5 degrees of Leo, of Taurus. Let me get that exact here. Okay, you see the sun is at 5:54, and the moon is at 5, let's get the moon at 5:54. 5:45. Okay, there's exact. There's the eclipse degree, right? Here's the lunar eclipse, 5:5. Where's her natal sun? 5 Leo. So the lunar eclipse is squaring her natal sun in the 10th house. The 10th house is one of the parents, mother or father, you call it. You know, it's either way, I don't really care here. It's the parental axis, and the sun sits in there. Something about a light is going to be extinguished, right? The solar eclipse is on the moon. Everybody see this? The lunar eclipse hits the sun. This lunar eclipse squares the sun. The solar eclipse opposes the moon. So her luminaries are being hit, and the sun, and one represents mom, the other could represent dad, but her dad's long dead. So this is all about the mother. Now, the mother dies on 7:30. Oh shoot, sorry. 7:30. Damn it, sorry guys. Why isn't this doing this? Why are you doing this to me right now? Here we go. Come on. Let me quit this. Hold on a second. The mother dies on 7:30:13. The transiting moon that day is at 19 degrees of Taurus. I don't normally use the transiting moon as a trigger, but here it does. But what's the bigger trigger here? Remember I said the sun will trigger. The sun, it's her birthday. Her birthday was July 29th. Her mother died on the 30th. The sun is triggering the lunar eclipse from April 25th. That was at 5 Scorpio. So this is one of those predictive things where around that date, the event gets triggered and the mother died. Here was the death. And it just, and also you have the moon transiting that day. Did everybody see what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Triggers? Okay. Remember I said that sometimes the event doesn't happen until later. I had something very interesting happen with me with 9/11. I live down near the World Trade Center, and I was home for 9/11. I witnessed the whole thing. That year that eclipse happened, that was the eclipse of 2001, the summer of 2001. Let me see if I have that. The summer of 2001 was 9/11. Okay? So if you look at the summer of 2001, I want to get the solar eclipse for 2001. And I'm going to put it up next to my chart. Second. Okay. Sorry. Here we go. Joseph Addeo. Okay. You notice I have Venus at 0 degrees Cancer, right? The day 9/11 eclipse happened on June 21st, 2001, 0 degrees Cancer. I remember thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Okay, nothing happened. I was like, and I had progressions. I had my progressed sun was entering 0 Cancer around this time. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Well, I remember I was singing opera at the time. I gave some performances that summer that went very well. But I was like, and I was just a novice in astrology. I hadn't been doing it that long. I was so disappointed. But then 9/11 came along. Now, this is a perfect instance of the eclipse happens on June 21st and the seeds are planted. It's a solar eclipse, but I'm in the dark. Nothing really happened. Or, I just was singing and had performance, but nothing that would indicate something so major with an eclipse and my progressed sun entering 0 degrees Cancer. But then what happened? 9/11 comes along. And if you look at 9/11, (9/11, 2001). Remember I said certain planets are going to trigger eclipse degrees, especially the nodes, Mars and the Sun. Mars is at 1 degree of Capricorn on 9/11. It triggers the node. It triggers the eclipse degree at 0 Cancer. And it triggers my natal Venus. Well, my whole life changed. My whole life changed on that day. I live only 10 blocks north. I had to evacuate my apartment. For the next 18 months, life down here was like a war zone. And I got a tremendous amount of money from that. They paid my rent for 18 months after that because I lived in this area and I had to get my house clean. And there's all this money. So the Venus was, my whole identity shifted here on that 9/11. This is a perfect example of something being triggered later by the Mars. Now, everybody should pay attention to this eclipse coming up in June, because this is we had the eclipse at 0 Cancer happened in 2001 on the United States, right? We have the same eclipse degree being hit this coming June. June 21st, we have another eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer. It's going to reiterate themes from 2001. Does that mean we're going to have another terrorist attack? I don't know, but I'm paying very close attention to this eclipse because it's that same 9/11 eclipse. Now, it could just mean maybe there is another terrorist attack. Maybe it's not as bad. Or maybe it's going to have to do with something with foreigners. Maybe it's going to have to do with immigration or something. Because that was the first time we had foreign people coming into our soil, attacking our country. And now we have foreign people trying to come into this country and people are trying to keep them out illegally. I don't want to go into the politics. I'm just going into the astrology here. It could be something terrorist. It could be just something having to do with foreigners. It's an evolutionary process, but it's the same eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer. And 0 degrees Cancer is the cardinal signs. Does anybody have any questions before I move on with more charts? Questions? Okay.
Questions, anyone?
21st. Eclipse, the summer solstice. It's going to be a hot summer in the city.
Well, now let's look at Queen Elizabeth. Here's Queen Elizabeth's chart. First of all,
Bird is
here for her. Let's put the lunar eclipse on top of her chart. This upcoming, you are unmuted. Get this sign out of there. I want this out of there. Queen Elizabeth. Let's do Queen Elizabeth. And the lunar eclipse on January 10th. Okay. This lunar eclipse is on her nodal axis. What do you think might happen with her this year?
Oh, very interesting.
I give up the throne.
Yeah.
On her nodal axis, exactly 20 degrees. And her ascendant is 21 degrees Capricorn. So the lunar eclipse is about endings. My God, she's 91? Mm-hmm. She might make some kind of announcement about her destiny. The nodes are destiny. Cancer, Capricorn, patriarchy, motherhood. the country, my role in the country.
Joe, we have a question here from Taylor. Taylor, unmute yourself and give your question to Joe, please.
Hi. So the lunar eclipse of January is, of course, in my first house, opposing moon in the 7th and squaring my MC in Libra.
Is your mother's, how is your mother still around?
No, I don't have a mother, but I have an elderly aunt that was like a mother to me.
Does she have, is she still alive? Is she ill? Is she happy?
She seems fine, but you never know anything.
Okay. So your natal moon is in the 7th house?
Yes.
At what degree?
24.
24 of what sign?
Cancer.
Cancer, okay. Are you married? So the moon in the 7th house would be any.
No, I'm single mom.
Okay, so this is going to have to do with about what kind of a mother you are, the older women in your life, how you mother, how you mother other people, what kind of a mother you are. And what did you say about and how you partner with people? The 7th house are partnerships, relationships, and the moon is nurturing and mothering. What house does the moon rule? Oh, the 7th house, if it's Cancer, right?
Yeah, 7.
It might, and what other aspects did you say it makes? It squares the midheaven?
Yes.
What kind of work do you do?
I do data management in finance.
And how, so it would have something to do with your role as a partner and something with your role in your work. Maybe it might be a year where you back off of work and find some kind of a relationship takes. Are you somebody who's very work driven?
Yes.
It might be a year where it reverses a little bit and you have to take care of yourself and other people and work backs off. So the eclipse would have something to do with reversing the energy of being a little bit more of a workaholic and taking care of my own personal needs. So maybe you meet somebody important this year that changes your life in some way. Or just so because this would affect your career and your 7th house relationships, and the eclipses would have a tendency to reverse that. How old are you?
I spoke to you before about the December 26th eclipse hitting my Saturn first house. I'm like,
Oh, you're the same lady. Oh, you're the same lady. Okay. So, so look at 19 years ago when these same eclipses happened. That might give you some indication. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So this is Queen Elizabeth, but what's interesting around Queen Elizabeth is, look at her, something is happening here. Okay, the inner chart is her natal chart, the middle chart are her progressions, and the outer chart are the transits. So we know the eclipse, the lunar eclipse is hitting this axis, the nodal axis and the ascendant descendant. Look at what's progressed Saturn is stationing direct.
Wow.
Her reputation, her career is shifting. She's ready to make some kind of move. Her progressed ascendant has just entered 0 Cancer.
Oh,
0
wow.
Cancer is where the upcoming solar eclipse is going to be in June.
She'll give up the throne. I mean, it's
She's gonna
over.
Throne. Progressed Venus is at 29 of Gemini. It's about
Yeah.
the world axis. She's going to give up the throne.
Yeah.
Transiting Uranus is just come all over her sun. She's a Taurus. And also progressed Chiron here. So, but I don't want to go too much into transits here. But it's a big deal. And she's got that midheaven at Scorpio. Now, if you look at her children, Prince Charles, the upcoming solar eclipse on June 21st is at 0 Cancer. That's his Jupiter and his Uranus.
Yeah.
In whole sign houses, Jupiter is the 5th house, rules the 5th house of King. but it opposes Uranus. Is he going to be king, or is he going to get toppled, or is he going to be passed over, or is he going to skip a generation? He's got that, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And what about his son? His son is Prince William. He's born on a solar eclipse at 0 Cancer. Prince William is born on the solar eclipse at 0 Cancer. In 1982, June 21st, he was born. And so all these eclipses are hitting the royal family. Big deal. Big deal. Does everybody see that?
It's huge.
It's huge. It's huge.
She'll probably give it up, but I don't know that Charles will want it. You know, he may just pass it on to his son.
It's all very, very fascinating.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
What's happening with Charles?
Well, Charles is. We just looked at his chart. Charles has. It's very funny. Charles has the moon at 0 Taurus. The Queen has the sun at 0 Taurus. Right?
Yeah.
Now, they're both getting, eclipses aside, they've both gotten transiting Uranus on their moon and sun. So that's part of interpretation here too. But in terms of this eclipse, the eclipse at the one we're having now at 4 degrees of Capricorn doesn't really do much to Charles.
Well, look at the Uranus is on his node. It's right on it.
What Uranus?
I know, I'm sorry, transiting, yeah. It isn't the eclipse.
Is on his node, right.
Yeah, right.
In terms of the eclipses, this eclipse hits the Queen. The eclipse of December 26th and January 10th hits the Queen big. The eclipses in June hit Charles and Prince William much bigger. So if I'm going to interpret this as she's going to make some big proclamation around these eclipses within the next 6 months, and then the next set of eclipses take over the next generation. She's ready to make some big decision. She has to be. I mean, when you look at her chart and what's going on there, especially with this progressed Saturn and the progressed ascendant and the progressed Venus, and then you have these eclipses of destiny on the nodal axis. It's too juicy. And also look at her progressed Mercury. Her progressed Mercury is also stationing. And Mercury rules her 6th house of daily work and the 9th house. She wants to stop traveling. She wants to stop traveling and she wants to stop working. She's reversing. Her Mercury's reversing and her Saturn's reversing. And then the eclipse is going to knock her out. It's going to knock it out. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's her death. I think it's more for retirement. Don't you, Jackie?
Yes. I think she wants to withdraw from public life is what I think. And it's
right.
She doesn't want to know anymore.
Right. Also, when eclipses start happening, usually you see a lot more famous people dying. Now, the eclipses have just started. So the only recent death I've noticed was Danny Aiello, who's an actor. So watch for famous people dying in the next 6 weeks. Now, famous people die all the time, but these should be leaders. These should be people who have some stature in their field. Famous actors, famous writers, famous world leaders. You're going to see a lot of stuff around eclipses. Remember when the eclipses happened in the summer of 2017? That was the time period when the eclipses were in Leo and Aquarius. And that's when all the sexual stuff came out with the actors in Hollywood. And you saw a lot of juicy stuff happening with Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein and all those people. And all the child abuse and stuff like that because the eclipses were in Leo, Aquarius. So you saw a lot of things about sexuality. Kevin Spacey's a wonderful example of, if you look at his chart, he's born July 27th, 1959. The lunar eclipse On October 29th, 2017, and actor Anthony Rapp alleged that Spacey, while he was intoxicated, made sexual advancements at him in 1986, when Rapp was 14 and Kevin Spacey was 26. And on October 29th, he made these allegations, and then the following weeks and months, Kevin Spacey's career was destroyed, basically. Well, the eclipse that preceded that, the eclipses were in August. The lunar eclipse was August 7th at 15 degrees Aquarius, opposite his natal Uranus. He's a Leo, with Leo rising, with Uranus at 15 Leo and Mercury at 18 Leo. So the lunar eclipse was at 15 Leo on his Uranus. And in the months that followed that Uranus, he was outed. He was basically outed for his misconduct with underage children. That would be the Mercury in Leo, because the Mercury would be near the eclipse degree. And this is all in his first house. The solar eclipse that summer on August 21st, 2017 was at 28 degrees of Leo. That was opposite his Chiron. Chiron in mythology was the rapist. Well, he was the healer, but he also, Chiron, we all love to think of Chiron as the healer, the medicine guy, healing, and he is all that. But in mythology, the centaurs and the satyrs, which is what Chiron was, were lascivious, rampaging rapists, and they ran around the countryside drinking alcohol and raping children and everything. So you have one eclipse opposing Uranus, and you have the other eclipse opposing Chiron. He's exposed for his nefarious Chiron things. The Chiron has to do with sexual healing. Chiron's a very sexual planet. So the eclipses happen in August. Remember, the eclipses set things in motion, and in the months that follow, they get triggered. And he gets triggered in early October is when all this stuff happened to him. All this stuff happened to him. It's a big deal. Now, if you look at his chart too, so what I'm trying to say is when you're working with clients, and they come in for readings, and you see they have major points. The sun, the moon, the ascendant, the midheaven, Venus, the personal points especially. You want to talk about what the 6 months might be. You want to talk about those houses and those planets and saying the stage is being set for things going here. And you ask them what's going on in their life. You ask them what's going on in their life now, because that will give you a lot of information on how to predict an event might happen or what type of event. Okay? In Kevin Spacey's case, when you look at around October 29th, 2017, when everything hit the fan for him, you notice that his Venus is stationed by progression at 29 Leo. And Venus rules his moon and his 10th house, his reputation. So something is reversing around his reputation with that. And the eclipses are hitting those planets. And on that day, on the 29th of October, when all this is happening, I love it. The moon is transiting through Aquarius. So it's hitting the polarity of these Leo Aquarius planets. Okay? And the sun is in Aquarius. So the trigger dates aren't, the 29th was when that actor made the accusation, but he lost his agent, he lost his contract with House of Cards, and he lost all of everything about a week later. I'm sorry, a week later, not a month later. About a week later, when the sun is around 13 degrees of Scorpio, and it's triggering, remember the sun will trigger the eclipse. The sun is triggering the Aquarius lunar eclipse that was at 15 degrees of Aquarius. So around the month of November, when the shit hits the fan for him and everything, the sun is triggering the 15 degrees of the fixed signs, which is triggering the eclipse.
Okay, Joe, we have another question. What about trines and sextiles to natal planets, or are these aspects not considered?
Lovely, lovely. Look at them, but they're not going to be as momentous. That'll just give you some, it'll be nice. It'll be nice, but they're not actions, not the cross of matter. Not the cross. It'll be maybe you get a reward. Maybe something good, something more positive will happen. Something more positive will happen. Now, I'll give you a good example of something like that. Bette Midler. When Bette Midler did Hello, Dolly, Bette Midler did Hello, Dolly. Again, and I know I'm giving you this is a good example. This is a happy example. But these are squares too. These are squares too. But you've got to frame it. When Bette Midler did her opening night, I'm just going to put a tri-reel up for her. Her opening night was 4/17. I'm sorry. 4/20/17. Okay. Now, remember, you've got to frame the eclipses and everything with the transits and the progressions. Her progressed Jupiter is stationing retrograde during the whole run of Hello, Dolly. Now, Jupiter's a benefic. And here it's, her Jupiter's angular at birth. It's right at the, when it's angular, it's more important, okay? And her Jupiter natally sextiles Mercury and natally trines Uranus. It squares Saturn, but she's got a trine and sextile. Now, by progression, it's shifting. Well, that's going to indicate a major shift in direction for her in a very Jupiterian way, and it's retrograding. She's opening up on a show that's a revival. She's going back to something that's big. Everything's big, 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 big. Big, 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 big with the show, right? But the eclipses, the show opens on the 20th of April 2017. And the eclipses, the eclipses before the show, the lunar eclipses February 11th, 2017 at 22 Leo. That's her progressed sun. That's pretty nice, but that's the lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse is on February 26, 2017 at 8 Pisces. That's squaring her natal sun. So all the both eclipses before the opening of Hello, Dolly, one is squaring her natal sun, and the other is opposing her progressed sun. Well, those are hard aspects, but she's doing a show 7 days a week. She's the star of the show. It's her ego, her star quality, her self-expression. You know, the sun, a sun for an actor, for anybody, the sun represents where you shine, how you come alive, your star quality. But for an actor, it's even more so because actors are in the public limelight. So her sun is getting hit by these eclipses hard. Well, she's doing 7 shows a week. She's working very, very hard to display her creativity. And it's all being bookended. How you're going to frame the reading is in this progressed Jupiter. The progressed Jupiter is standing still in the sign of Libra, in the 7th house of the public and arts and harmony. And she's singing, and the sun rules her 5th house. So the sun is being hit by the eclipses, both her progressed sun and natal sun. The sun is the sign of is your creative planet, and it's ruling the 5th house of creative and artistic self-expression. So,
okay, Joe, we have a question. What if the 26th?
For the rest, because we're almost done, so let's do questions for the rest of the.
Okay, what if the 26th, December 26th solar eclipse is trine the natal sun but opposite the progressed sun? So an eclipse, this is the same question. So an eclipse in opposition to a progressed sun can be positive especially if it trines the natal sun.
Yes, I would, as an astrologer reading that for a client, I would stress the positive. I would say it's going to put in your natural talent into effect, but you're going to, other people, because the opposition, you're ready to put in some talent, and other people are going to make you work harder to express your talent and creative ability. That's very positive, because other people are going to force you to shine. Other people are going to put you under pressure. Other people are going to make you, and the trine is going to say, I can do it. So that would be very positive, because that's a perfect example, which all astrologers want to see. You want to see soft aspects with hard aspects. That's the best combination in the world of the same planet, having a soft and hard aspect, because the soft aspect is going to be the expression of the talent and the ease of doing it, and the hard aspect is going to give you a challenge to push it. That's wonderful. Whoever asked that question, what houses are in what house? Who's the person?
It's me, Sherry Hassan.
Oh, so sorry. So where's your natal sun?
My natal sun's on the cusp of the 9th in Placidus at 5 degrees Taurus, and I had realized that when I looked at this eclipse, but as you were talking before, I was like, oh, damn, it's actually opposite my 4-degree progressed sun and Cancer in the 10th.
I thought, wait, your natal sun's in the 9th?
My natal sun's in the 9th, yeah. It's
And the
right on
progressed
cusp.
sun is just gone. The progressed sun is in the 10th.
Yep.
So yeah, you're an astrologer. I need to study new philosophies, new techniques, new kinds of. Maybe I need to study more Hellenistic astrology, new philosophy of the 9th house, and I have to put these new studies. The 9th house sun, and the 9th house sun comes alive, loves to study, loves to.
Well, actually, what I'm starting to do is teach.
Okay,
There you go.
And the progressed sun is in Cancer in the 10th house. You're making it part of your living, part of your reputation. So are you teaching from home or online? It doesn't really matter. But
no, well, I'd like to do both, but it's just a matter of marketing, you know.
Well, because if the progressed sun is in Cancer, I remember when my progressed sun went into Cancer, I just loved being at home and working from home. But your Cancer is your 10th house?
No, my 10th house cusp is Gemini, but I have a Cancer moon in the 11th natally.
But your progressed sun just entered Cancer. Am I reading you right?
It's at 4 degrees, so it entered a few years ago.
Okay.
I'm almost coming up to the grand sextile by solar arc.
Okay, so you've got so the 5-degree Taurus sun is getting trined
Right.
by the 4-degree Capricorn eclipse.
Exactly.
And the 4-degree progressed sun is getting actually an yeah, that's fabulous. And you have to read it in unison with transiting Uranus on your sun.
On my sun, exactly.
I have one way of life with how I practice astrology in the beginning of a new way of life. And I've got to study more astrology, and I've got to put myself out there in a new way. I also
have my progressed midheaven on my natal Uranus.
There you go, Sherry.
I would
watch out, here I come.
Sherry, I would read that all positive. The only negative there, and it's not negative, I have to make changes. I might have to redo my website. I have some old antiquated ideas about certain astrology concepts that I have got to run. Because I want to learn it, because I want to teach, I've got to make sure I've got all my skills down. I've got to make sure I've got some more techniques in my bag of tricks. I don't look at that as a negative. That's just, I've got some more work to do.
Right.
We have one more. Yeah, we have another question, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks so much.
And what does it mean if the eclipse squares the progressed sun in the 4th in Aries?
If the eclipse squares the progressed sun in the 4th in Aries, so that means the Capricorn eclipse is going to be, Capricorn is their first house?
Yes.
Well, your identity, something about your creative identity. Well, what do you do for a living? What do you do?
We just spoke. Data management.
Oh, it's the same woman.
Yeah.
You want a full reading. The progressed sun Is that 4 degrees Aries?
Yes.
Is it exactly at 4 degrees Aries? Because you have to use, with progressions, I want the very tight orbs. It's at 4 degrees?
It's 4 and change. I don't remember.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Well, something about your identity at home. You work in data. Do you want to work more from home?
No.
The moon is being hit in the 7th house, and the sun is being hit in the 4th house.
Right, but moon that's the NATO, and this one is progress sun. I don't know.
I'm ready. The progression is what you're ready for. I'm ready for a new beginning with relationships with men in my life. I'm ready to do you want a relationship?
Yes.
I'm ready to put myself out there because the eclipse is in the 1st house. I'm ready to take action in any way, shape, or form to put myself out there to meet a guy, because the sun has progressed into the 4th house, who might bring me some type of security. I'm not talking about old school security here of looking for a man to take care of you financially or anything like that. I'm talking about emotional security. I'm talking about romance. I'm talking about, I'm ready to put myself out. I'm ready to do what it takes. I'm ready to advertise myself. The 1st house is how I advertise myself. The eclipse is there. The progressed sun is in the 4th house. The sun represents all the important men in our life. It represents romance. It represents fun. It represents joy. I want to find joy more around my house. Now, it also could be I want to entertain more at home. I want to use my home. I want to have people more in my home. I want to make my home more alive. If I'm not finding love and romance and having some guy around, well, then I'm going to bring people into my house and do the work that it takes to entertain. And then if you were about to tell me, I hate having people in my house, I hate entertaining, well, you might want to try to have more parties there because it'll bring more people in your life and bring more people in your life that you can meet for fun and to feel more alive. I want something like that. It could be something like that.
Thank you so much. You're always fabulous and fantastic to listen to. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Joe, we have someone who wants to know how they can contact you.
Oh, my email, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'd rather be contacted by email. My email is joeaddeo, JOEADDEO @yahoo.com. joeaddeo@yahoo.com. My website, you can contact me through my website too, which is under construction. Well, it's still working, but the eclipse hitting my Saturn is making me restructure my website. But my website is Joseph Addeo. Sorry for the confusion. The website is my full josephaddeo.com. And my email is joeaddeo@yahoo.com. I have a Gemini moon. Sorry for the duality there. And I can be contacted either way. I make most of my living doing my consultations and my reading. I work from home. I'm a homebody. I have a Cancer. I have all these planets in Cancer. And my Taurus sun. I live at home. I do everything at home. So that's how you can contact me. There's some stuff I didn't cover here, but I think I got the gist of it. Does anybody else have any other questions?
No, we have many thanks. Wonderful webinar.
Who's David Shipman? Is he the author? I'm a real movie buff, and I have books written by David Shipman of movie books. That's not the David Shipman who writes movie books, is it?
You mean in the gallery, like
So somebody's name. I think he left. I think.
Okay. All right. No.
Scared him away. So I hope everybody enjoyed that.
You should have more of your webinars, Joe.
Yeah, well, we'll have Joe back in a year or so. You know, I have to make the gamut. I have to run the gamut with other presenters. Hold on, there's another. Oh, thank you so much. Great webinar. Yes, we'll have Joe back. And if there's no other questions, I will wrap up so you know how to contact Joe. And maybe Joe will get some clients out of this. And folks, in 3 or 4 days, this webinar will be available for viewing on YouTube, on the NCGR YouTube channel. And it will be up there available for viewing for 6, possibly 8 weeks, depending on whenever Armand takes it down. Okay?
Great.
So if you didn't get it this time, just pull up the NCGR YouTube channel and you'll be able to watch it for at least 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. It was a wonderful webinar. We all got a lot out of this, Joe. Really,
Happy holidays.
happy holiday. Yes, everybody have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
holiday. Happy
Enjoy.
New Year, happy holiday. And thank you, Joe and NCG. Thank you,
Thanks, Joe.
Joe, you're
Thank
getting
you.
rave reviews
My
here.
pleasure.
It's really
I really
awesome.
enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Happy
Thank you,
Happy
Jack.
Hanukkah. Thank you.
Holiday. Thank you, Joe.
I'll sing something, but I really, but no
Yeah.
voice.
Next time.
Next time.
Next time, folks. Thank you so much for coming in again. It'll be available on YouTube in a few days. Okay? If you have any questions, contact me, Jackie Slevin, jcslevin@gmail.com. Okay?
Bye.
Thank you. And there'll be another webinar next month, but that's in the works. I don't have all the details down yet. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.